The 3 officers cleared in Manuel Ellis's death will each receive $500,000 to leave Tacoma Police. Oregon braces for freezing rain, while cold temperatures elsewhere strain electric grids. The Pacific Northwest braces for a new round of ice and freezing rain after deadly weekend storm. Today is Thursday, January 18th, 2024. And this is the Dunkley Report. 3. Washington State police officers who were cleared of all criminal charges last month in the 2020 death of Manuel Ellis will each receive $500,000 to leave the Tacoma Police Department. Ellis was a 33-year-old black man who was shocked, beaten, and restrained face down on a sidewalk as he pleaded for breath. A jury in December acquitted officers Timothy Rankine, Matthew Collins, and Christopher Burbank of manslaughter or murder charges. The police department on Tuesday announced findings that the officers did not violate the use of force policy that was in effect at the time. The city also released voluntary separation agreements with the officers showing each will receive $500,000. Parts of Oregon are bracing for freezing rain after a weekend of extreme winds knocked down trees and cut power to thousands. Across the U.S., perilously cold weather on Tuesday closed schools and put electricity supplies at risk. Tennessee Valley Authority, which provides electricity to millions of people, asked customers in 7 states to voluntarily cut back. A similar plea came from the grid operator in Texas. New York City's Central Park recorded at least an inch of snow in a day for the first time since 2022. Philadelphia snapped a similar dry streak. In Washington, D.C., a friendly snowball fight broke out on the National Mall during a government snow day. The Pacific Northwest is bracing for more hazardous winter weather after a weekend storm that resulted in at least 7 deaths. Tens of thousands of people remained without power on Tuesday as a vast area, including parts of southwest Washington and western Oregon, were under an ice storm warning. Meteorologists expect up to half an inch of ice through early Wednesday before temperatures warm up. Authorities have warned that the ice could weigh down trees and power lines, possibly causing further outages or delaying the restoration of power for homes and businesses that have been without it since Saturday. Drug overdose deaths in New Hampshire have increased in recent years, and some residents want to hear more from the presidential candidates about how they'd help. Much of the talk from the Republican presidential hopefuls has focused on the supply side. Former President Donald Trump, who once described New Hampshire as a drug-infested den, has proposed using the military against foreign drug cartels, a view echoed by Florida Gov. Ron DeSantis and former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley. Haley struck a more compassionate tone Wednesday, however, when she visited and praised a recovery center in Rochester. Court documents show the shooter who killed 5 people and endangered the lives of over 40 others at an LGBTQ+ nightclub in Colorado Springs plans to plead guilty to new federal charges. A plea agreement made public Tuesday would allow the defendant to avoid the death penalty. The documents show Anderson Aldrich made a deal to plead guilty to 50 hate crime charges and 24 firearm violations. Aldrich previously was sentenced to life in prison after pleading guilty to 5 state charges of murder and 46 counts of attempted murder, one for each person at Club Q during the November 2022 attack. While the U.S. is shivering through bone-chilling cold, most of the rest of the world is feeling unusually warm weather. Scientists Tuesday say that fits with what climate change is doing to Earth. What's happening in the U.S. is a temporary polar vortex outbreak of chilly air, escaping its normal Arctic jail. But, scientists say, this is happening more frequently as the Arctic warms 3 to 4 times faster than the rest of the globe. That warming is knocking the polar vortex out of its normal place. This Arctic outbreak is particularly intense, and another is due at the end of the month. The drowning deaths of 3 migrants have brought new urgency to an extraordinary showdown between the Biden administration and Texas Republican Governor Greg Abbott. The state has seized a city park in a major corridor for illegal crossings and denied entry to Border Patrol agents. The Department of Justice filed a new request late Monday with the Supreme Court to grant federal agents access to a portion of the border along the Rio Grande that is occupied by the Texas National Guard and the Texas Military Department. The request followed the drownings of a young Mexican mother and her 2 children on Friday. Donald Trump has scored a record victory in the Iowa caucuses and said Tuesday that he wants another big win in New Hampshire. Voters in the New England state get their turn January 23rd to decide just how competitive the Republicans' nominating fight will be as the former president continues to dominate his party, former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley and Florida Governor Ron DeSantis face mounting pressure to improve on their distant finishes in Monday's caucuses. Voters in New Hampshire pride themselves on their independent streak as longtime hosts of the nation's first Republican presidential primary. Trump is already campaigning as if he's in a general election rematch with Democratic President Joe Biden. Haley, especially, believes she can compete with Trump in New Hampshire. Former President Donald Trump left his defamation trial before a lawyer told jurors in an opening statement that Trump had used the world's biggest microphone to destroy a New York columnist's reputation after she said he had sexually abused her. Before leaving Tuesday, though, Trump showed his displeasure with the courts and the current trial in particular. The jury must decide what, if anything, Trump owes columnist E. Jean Carroll. Trump, sitting at the defense table, shook his head in disgust as the judge told prospective jurors that another jury had already decided that the former president had sexually abused Carroll in a luxury department store in the 1990s. ABC News has canceled the next Republican presidential debate in New Hampshire after Nikki Haley said she won't participate unless former President Donald Trump takes part in it. Haley's comment Tuesday left Florida Governor Ron DeSantis as the only candidate committed to Thursday's event. Her decision came a day after the all-important Iowa caucuses, in which Trump marked a wide margin of victory over both Haley and DeSantis. Haley tried to make her electoral argument more about Trump than DeSantis. The move could also be a result of the last debate, which featured only Haley and DeSantis. Haley didn't perform as well as expected, and DeSantis ultimately ended up beating her for second place in Iowa. Today's news was reported by the Associated Press. This has been the international news for Thursday, January 18th, 2024. Thanks again for joining us here at the Dunkley Report.